Have you ever felt like someone you care about is slipping further away, even when it seems like they're missing you just as much as you miss them? The more you reach out, the more distant they become, leaving you trapped in a cycle of confusion and heartbreak. You try to understand, but it just doesn't make sense. You know they care, you know they feel something, yet they continue to pull away. You're left wondering, why is this happening? Why does someone stay distant, even when it's clear they're missing you? If you're feeling this way right now, you're not alone. It's a deeply painful experience that so many people face in relationships, and it leaves you questioning not just the other person, but yourself too. It's easy to feel rejected, to believe that maybe you're not enough. But the truth is far more complicated, and it's time to look beyond the surface of their behavior to uncover what's really going on. You might feel frustrated or confused, caught in a loop of trying to bridge the gap only to be met with silence or withdrawal. It's incredibly painful when you feel disconnected from someone you care about, especially when it seems like they're doing the very thing that hurts you the most, pulling away when they should be drawing closer. You begin to wonder if it's you, if you're somehow the cause of their distance, but here's the hard truth. Their behavior isn't about you. It's about them and the fears they've been carrying for years, fears that make them push you away even when they crave connection. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the vulnerability that comes with allowing someone in. This might sound impossible to understand, but the more you realize that their actions stem from fear rather than disinterest, the clearer the situation will become. There's something profoundly unsettling about being in a relationship with someone who keeps their distance, even when they clearly feel something. The truth is that for many people, especially those with avoidant attachment styles, vulnerability is terrifying. The thought of getting too close to someone, of letting down their guard and exposing their true selves, creates a sense of panic. They've learned over time that opening up leaves them vulnerable to pain and disappointment, and so they build walls to protect themselves. It's not that they don't want connection, it's that they don't know how to handle it without feeling like they might lose control or get hurt. And so they pull away. But here's the empowering part. Understanding this is the first step to breaking the cycle. When you realize that their distance isn't a reflection of your worth, but rather their own inner struggles, you can begin to shift how you respond. You can stop blaming yourself, stop questioning your value, and instead start focusing on how you can approach this situation with patience, empathy, and compassion. The answer isn't in chasing after them or demanding answers. It's in understanding their fears and giving them the space to confront them on their own terms. Stay with me for a moment longer, because understanding the psychology behind their behavior will open up new ways for you to approach the situation with clarity and confidence. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand why they act the way they do, but also learn how to respond in a way that nurtures trust, builds connection, and empowers you to create the relationship you truly deserve. This journey starts with understanding, both theirs and yours. Stick around, because the insights that follow could change everything for you. When someone with an avoidant attachment style pulls away, it's often because of something much deeper than surface-level disinterest. It's rooted in a fear that's so ingrained they can't help but push others away, even when their emotions are screaming for connection. It's not that they don't want intimacy, they long for it just as much as anyone else. But for them, intimacy represents a terrifying loss of control, a threat to their independence, and a potential source of pain. They've learned, through their experiences, that relying on others or opening themselves up to deep connection is risky, too risky. And so, they retreat, not because they don't care, but because they are afraid. They are afraid of losing themselves, of becoming vulnerable, and of facing the emotional wounds they've been running from for so long. This fear of vulnerability is what keeps them distant, even when their heart yearns to be close to you. You see, for avoidance, emotional closeness is a battleground. Every time they feel the pull of connection, it triggers a deep internal conflict. On one hand, they want to experience love, support, and intimacy. But on the other hand, those very things feel like a threat to their well-being, because opening up to someone means exposing their deepest, most fragile parts. This fear doesn't come from a place of distrust in you. It comes from a place of distrust in their ability to handle their own emotions. They fear losing their autonomy, being consumed by someone else's needs and ultimately being hurt. So, they choose distance over closeness, even when it's the last thing they truly want. What's even more painful is that this behavior often goes unnoticed by those on the receiving end. You may feel rejected, neglected, and abandoned, but what's really happening is that they're struggling with something far more profound. Their avoidance isn't an attack on you. It's their defense mechanism against the vulnerability that love demands. They've built walls stone by stone over the years, and breaking those walls down is something they don't know how to do without feeling like they're putting themselves in danger. The paradox is heartbreaking. The very thing they need to heal and grow is the thing they fear most: connection. But here's the most powerful truth you can hold on to. Their fear isn't insurmountable. It doesn't have to define the relationship. If you understand what's happening beneath the surface, you can begin to see that their distance is a defense, not a rejection. Knowing this doesn't just offer you comfort, it empowers you. You're no longer trapped in the confusion of wondering whether it's you or them. Instead, you're equipped with the understanding that their struggles are about their own fears, not your worth. This insight shifts your perspective and allows you to act from a place of clarity, patience, and compassion. In this space of understanding, you can step forward with confidence and empathy. You don't have to chase after them or fight to make them open up. You can create a safe space where they feel supported, not pressured. By giving them the room to approach you on their own terms, you're helping them confront their fears at their own pace. And while it may feel like a slow process, the courage you show in your own emotional resilience can be the catalyst for breaking down the barriers they've built. This is the path to deeper connection, the kind that's built on mutual respect, trust, and the willingness to face vulnerability together. The fear of vulnerability is a powerful force, one that doesn't just exist in the moment of connection, but has been shaping their entire way of relating to others for years. This is why they stay distant, even when they're missing you. The simple act of opening up feels like walking on a tightrope without a safety net. They know that the moment they allow themselves to get close, they risk losing control. And for them, that's a terrifying prospect. They've been conditioned to protect themselves, to remain self-sufficient, to trust no one but themselves. Over time, this self-reliance becomes both a shield and a prison, keeping them safe, but also locked in isolation. They want love, but they fear the price it demands, the surrender of control, the vulnerability that exposes their fears and insecurities. But understand this, their resistance to vulnerability doesn't mean they don't feel. It's quite the opposite. Their emotions are intense, raw, and real. They just don't know how to process them in a healthy way. The moment they feel themselves getting too close, their internal alarm bells go off. The fear of emotional engulfment overwhelms them. They start to believe that by allowing someone in, they'll lose themselves. And so they pull away, retreating to the safety of distance, even when their heart aches to be near you. They crave connection, yet they don't know how to handle the closeness that connection demands. This is where the pain lies for both of you. You, on one hand, are left to wonder why they stay distant when it's clear that they care. You start to question if you're doing something wrong, if you're not enough, if your love isn't worth their effort. And on their side, they're battling the most internal of wars, trying to balance the desire for connection with the overwhelming fear that connection will pull them apart. It's a silent battle, one that feels lonely and isolating for both you and them. But here's the truth, their behavior is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their emotional struggles, their inability to trust the vulnerability that love requires. And once you see this clearly, you can stop taking their actions personally. In this realization, there's freedom. You can begin to release the hold that their distance has over your emotional state. Instead of blaming yourself or questioning your worth, you can choose to see the situation through a lens of empathy and understanding. You can recognize that their distance is not rejection, it's self-protection. You can acknowledge that they are doing the best they know how, even if it's not the healthiest way. And with this understanding, you can offer them a space where they can feel safe enough to approach you without the pressure to fix everything immediately. This approach doesn't just change how you view them, it transforms how you engage with them. You begin to operate from a place of emotional strength, knowing that their distance doesn't define you, and that your worth is not contingent on their ability to open up. As you step into this understanding, you'll begin to notice a shift, not just in the dynamics of your relationship, but in how you approach your own emotional boundaries. You'll start to realize that your own emotional security doesn't need to depend on someone else's actions. By embracing patience and compassion, you empower yourself to create a relationship based on trust, mutual respect, and emotional resilience, rather than fear and avoidance. This shift will not only help you connect with them, but also transform the way you connect with yourself. When you start to see their behavior for what it truly is, an expression of fear, not indifference, you begin to shift your perspective in a way that transforms everything. You realize that their emotional distance is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their inner struggle with vulnerability. You stop taking it personally, and instead, you offer understanding. In doing so, you create an environment where healing can begin, where they can start to feel safe enough to face their deepest fears. But this process is not easy, and it's not quick. It requires an incredible amount of patience, both for them and for yourself. This is not a passive waiting game. It's an active, conscious choice to hold space for someone while they work through their emotional barriers. You must accept that change won't happen overnight, and their emotional walls won't crumble instantly. It's not about forcing them to open up or demanding answers. It's about creating a relationship dynamic where vulnerability can emerge naturally without pressure. You give them the time they need, and you give yourself the grace to accept that things will evolve at their own pace. It's in this space of mutual respect and understanding that the most profound shifts can happen. When they feel like they're not being judged or rushed, they may begin to lower their walls, bit by bit. And while it's easy to get discouraged during the waiting, remember that every small step they take toward emotional openness is a victory, not just for them, but for you too. The truth is that healing takes time, and emotional growth requires a willingness to face fears head-on. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, the walls they've built are not just physical, they are deeply rooted in emotional wounds that they've been carrying for years. These wounds are not easily healed, and they won't disappear because of a few kind gestures. It will take patience, compassion, and a level of emotional maturity that allows both of you to navigate this challenge together. This is the transformative power of understanding. When you understand their fears, you no longer feel as though you're at the mercy of their distance. You don't feel rejected. Instead, you feel empowered to offer them something they may not have experienced before, a safe, non-judgmental space to process their emotions without fear of abandonment. By focusing on your own emotional resilience and self-worth, you not only help them but also help yourself. You start to realize that your emotional security doesn't need to be dependent on their actions. You begin to find strength in knowing that you are enough, regardless of whether they open up right away or whether they pull back again. This realization gives you the freedom to respond with grace instead of frustration, and it helps you create an environment where connection can grow over time. You no longer need to chase after them. You no longer need to convince them that you're worthy of their love. You are enough. You've always been enough. And as you step into this understanding, you'll notice a shift in how you approach relationships, not just with them, but with anyone. You'll begin to recognize that real intimacy isn't about forcing someone to let their guard down. It's about creating a space where vulnerability is not only safe, but welcomed. This new mindset, one rooted in compassion, patience, and understanding, will not only transform the way you view the relationship, but also the way you view yourself. You'll become more emotionally secure, more resilient, and more equipped to navigate the complexities of love with clarity and confidence. And in doing so, you'll start to create the kind of connection you truly deserve. When you choose to approach their emotional distance with understanding and compassion, you take back control of your own emotional state. You stop being a passive participant in the relationship, waiting for them to change, and instead you become the active creator of a space where real transformation can happen. You stop reacting to their fear and start responding from a place of emotional strength. This shift allows you to stop seeing their withdrawal as a personal rejection. You begin to see it as part of their journey, one that you're choosing to walk beside without losing your own balance. This change in perspective is liberating. It frees you from the cycle of frustration, confusion, and doubt, and replaces it with a sense of purpose and clarity. But it's important to recognize that this journey won't always be easy. There will be moments when the distance feels unbearable, when the silence seems too loud, and when you're tempted to pull away yourself. It's during these moments, when everything feels uncertain, that you must hold on to the strength you've cultivated. You must remind yourself that love is not about forcing someone to meet you where you are. Love is about creating the space for them to meet you when they're ready, while staying true to yourself and your emotional needs. You won't be able to control their actions, but you can control how you respond. And in this response lies the power to transform not just the relationship, but your own emotional landscape. This power comes from the realization that you don't need anyone else to validate your worth. You don't need them to open up or meet your expectations in order to know that you are deserving of love. You are whole, complete, and enough, with or without their emotional availability. By embracing this truth, you stop seeing yourself as dependent on their behavior for your happiness. Instead, you become emotionally self-sufficient, rooted in the understanding that your worth is intrinsic and untouchable by external circumstances. This shift gives you the emotional freedom to love without fear, to give without expectation, and to hold space for them without sacrificing your own peace of mind. And as you continue on this path, you will begin to notice that the relationship begins to shift as well. Your newfound emotional strength creates an environment where vulnerability can be explored, at their pace, but on your terms. You may start to see them take small steps toward opening up, not because you're demanding it, but because they feel safe enough to try. They may not be able to shed all of their walls overnight, but every moment of connection, no matter how small, is a testament to the power of patience, understanding, and emotional resilience. Ultimately, the goal is not to change them. The goal is to create an environment where they feel supported enough to change themselves. You can't force someone to confront their fears, but you can create the conditions that allow them to do so in their own time. By holding space for them, by showing up as your most emotionally secure and compassionate self, you become the catalyst for their transformation. And in doing so, you create the space for a deeper, more meaningful connection, one built on understanding, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable together. When you let go of the need to control how the relationship unfolds, you begin to experience the freedom that comes with truly embracing the process. The pressure to fix or change them melts away, leaving room for you to focus on your own emotional growth. It's not about waiting around in limbo, hoping they'll change. It's about becoming the best version of yourself in the process. This shift allows you to step into a space where you are no longer defined by their actions, but by your own strength, resilience, and emotional clarity. You become the kind of person who can love deeply without being dependent on how the other person responds. And in this freedom, you begin to realize that your worth is not conditional. You don't need them to behave in a specific way to feel validated. Their fears, their emotional distance, their withdrawal, they no longer control your sense of self. This is where your true power lies. When you stop needing them to change and start focusing on your own growth, you stop being trapped in an emotional cycle that leaves you feeling drained and confused. You gain the ability to navigate any relationship from a place of emotional security, knowing that no one else can determine your happiness except you. By releasing the pressure on both yourself and them, you begin to experience the magic of unconditional love. You're no longer trying to force them to meet your emotional needs or demanding that they open up. Instead, you're creating the space for them to come to you when they're ready. You're giving them the freedom to approach the relationship on their own terms, without feeling pushed or overwhelmed. In this space, they may begin to feel safe enough to explore their own vulnerabilities, step by step, without fearing that they'll lose themselves in the process. This is the foundation for real emotional intimacy, the willingness to be vulnerable while also respecting each other's boundaries. As you grow emotionally, you become someone who is no longer bound by fear of rejection or abandonment. You know that you are enough, with or without their emotional availability. You've built an inner strength that allows you to give love freely without expecting anything in return. This love becomes pure, unburdened by the need to control or demand. It becomes a gift that you give freely, knowing that you are giving from a place of abundance, not need. This is what transforms the relationship. When you stop seeking validation from them and start seeking growth within yourself, you create a space where both of you can flourish, independently and together. In this space, you can begin to see them not as someone who is keeping you at arm's length, but as someone who is struggling with their own fears and limitations. You begin to see their distance not as a rejection of you, but as a reflection of their own internal battle. This understanding allows you to approach them with even more compassion, more patience, and more empathy. You don't feel the need to fix them anymore because you realize that their journey is theirs to navigate. You're simply there to support, to love, and to be the steady, emotionally secure presence that they need, even if they're not ready to fully open up yet. And through this, you'll find that the connection between you deepens, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it to unfold naturally, at its own pace. When you let go of the need for instant results, you unlock the power of patience. It's a quiet power that allows you to hold space for someone without the pressure to change them. It's an understanding that love, real love, takes time to grow and evolve. You start to realize that the more you give them room to process their feelings, the more they can come to terms with their own fears. This is the key to creating a space where vulnerability can exist without fear of judgment or rejection. When you approach the relationship with this deep emotional understanding, you become a source of security, someone they can lean on without feeling overwhelmed. This shift isn't about lowering your standards or compromising your emotional needs. It's about giving them the time and space they need to meet you where you are. It's about recognizing that while they may not be ready to open up now, they may eventually come to a place where they can. And in the meantime, you continue to work on yourself, on your own emotional growth, your self-awareness, and your inner peace. As you do this, you naturally become more resilient, more emotionally secure, and more capable of navigating any relationship dynamic without feeling like you're losing yourself in the process. The real power lies in this emotional independence. It's the ability to remain true to yourself, even when the other person is distant or unavailable. You stop looking to them for your emotional fulfillment because you've learned how to fulfill yourself. You stop searching for validation in their responses or their actions. You've learned to trust your own worth. This is the foundation of a healthy relationship, one where both people can come together, not out of need, but out of a mutual desire for connection and growth. As you continue to focus on your own emotional resilience, you start to realize that you have the ability to create the kind of connection you want, regardless of whether the other person is ready or not. This doesn't mean pushing them or forcing them to change. It means understanding that your own emotional journey is just as important as theirs. You begin to take responsibility for your own happiness, while also being there to support them when they are ready to open up. In doing so, you create a space where both people can thrive, not as dependents on each other, but as emotionally whole individuals who are choosing to share their lives with one another. When you stop needing them to change to feel secure, you can start to see the beauty in the person they are, even with their flaws, their fears, and their emotional barriers. You begin to understand that these walls were built for a reason, and they won't come down overnight. But instead of feeling frustration or impatience, you meet them with empathy and understanding, allowing them to process at their own pace. This approach doesn't just create a healthier relationship, it also creates a deeper, more meaningful bond, one where both people feel seen, heard, and understood, without the need for constant validation or approval. In this space of emotional security and mutual respect, the connection between you becomes more authentic, more grounded, and more real. It's not about perfection, it's about understanding, patience, and the willingness to grow together. This is the kind of relationship that can withstand challenges because it is built on a foundation of emotional resilience and self-awareness. And as you continue on this path, you will find that the distance that once felt unbearable begins to shrink, replaced by a deep, lasting connection that is rooted in trust and genuine understanding. When you begin to understand that the emotional distance is not a reflection of your worth, but of their own fears, you stop feeling helpless. The walls they've built aren't meant to hurt you, even if they sometimes feel like a rejection. Instead, they're a protective measure, a response to their own vulnerabilities that they're not yet ready to face. And while this doesn't make their distance any easier to bear, it gives you a new way to approach the situation. You realize that it's not about them rejecting you, but about them protecting themselves from getting hurt. This understanding allows you to see the situation from a place of compassion rather than frustration. You begin to see their struggle as something you can empathize with rather than something you need to fix. As this understanding deepens, you start to recognize the importance of holding space for both of your emotional needs. You don't need to demand answers or force them to open up before they're ready. You start to realize that love isn't about pressure, it's about offering a safe space where both people can grow, individually and together. This is where true intimacy starts to take root. It's not about having all the answers or rushing to find solutions. It's about showing up with an open heart, ready to support them while also honoring your own emotional needs. You give yourself permission to be vulnerable, to express what you need without feeling guilty for doing so. In doing this, you create a balance between being there for them and being there for yourself, which ultimately strengthens the bond between you. You begin to understand that love isn't a one-sided effort. It's not just about what you can give, but also about what you are willing to receive. And while they may not be ready to give everything they have to offer just yet, you remain patient, trusting that their emotional growth is happening in its own time. As you hold space for them, you also hold space for yourself, allowing your own emotional needs to be met in healthy, constructive ways. This doesn't mean demanding more from them than they can give. It means taking responsibility for your own happiness, cultivating your own emotional security, and allowing the relationship to unfold naturally. This shift in perspective empowers you to stop seeking constant reassurance from them. Instead of looking to them for validation, you begin to validate yourself. You no longer need their emotional availability to feel secure in who you are. Your worth is not dependent on whether they open up or withdraw. You start to find peace in knowing that your emotional security comes from within. This realization frees you from the constant cycle of doubt and anxiety, allowing you to approach the relationship from a place of strength, not neediness. You no longer feel like you're waiting for them to catch up. You're simply allowing them the time they need, knowing that their pace doesn't diminish your worth. As you continue to focus on your own emotional well-being, you begin to see them differently, not as someone who is emotionally unavailable, but as someone who is working through their own fears and limitations. You understand that the distance they keep is a form of self-protection, not a personal attack. This perspective shift changes the way you approach the relationship. Instead of feeling frustrated or resentful, you feel compassion and understanding. And as you continue to show up with this emotional maturity, you'll find that the connection between you starts to evolve, slowly but surely, into something deeper, more meaningful, and more enduring. When you stop seeing their emotional distance as a personal failure, you free yourself from the weight of self-doubt. No longer do you need to question your worth or wonder if you're doing something wrong. You realize that their withdrawal isn't about you. It's a reflection of their own emotional struggles, their own walls built over time to protect themselves from past wounds. This understanding is powerful. It allows you to separate your identity from their actions. You are not the cause of their fear, and you are not the answer to their healing. They are on their own journey, and all you can do is show up with love, patience, and understanding. But in this showing up, you also make a promise to yourself. You will not lose yourself in the process. This promise is where your strength lies. You are not waiting for them to change in order to feel worthy of love. You are choosing to stand in your own power, knowing that your worth is inherent and unconditional. When you stop depending on them to meet your emotional needs, you begin to see how capable you are of filling your own emotional cup. This is the essence of self-love, the ability to care for your own heart, to nurture your own soul, without needing anyone else to validate your feelings. In this space, you begin to thrive emotionally. You discover that your happiness doesn't hinge on someone else's actions. You are capable of creating your own joy, building your own emotional resilience. When they pull away, you don't feel abandoned. Instead, you recognize their need for space as part of their process, and you honor that by continuing to grow in your own emotional journey. You become someone who doesn't rely on external circumstances to feel whole. Your inner peace is rooted in the understanding that you are enough, just as you are. As you continue to cultivate this emotional strength, something profound begins to happen. The energy in the relationship shifts. When you no longer need them to act a certain way to feel validated, you become a source of calm and security. Your emotional stability becomes a grounding force that invites them to open up when they're ready. You're not pushing them, not demanding anything from them. Instead, you're offering a safe space where they can feel seen and heard without fear of judgment or rejection. And when they do begin to take small steps toward opening up, it's not because you've forced it. It's because they feel safe enough to take the risk. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it is real. As you continue to show up for yourself, as you continue to deepen your own emotional resilience, the space between you begins to shrink. They may not be able to open up all at once, but each moment of connection becomes a building block toward a stronger, more intimate bond. This intimacy is not built on the expectation of change, but on the understanding that both of you are on your own paths, growing at your own pace, yet still choosing to be together. And in this shared space, you will find that the distance that once seemed insurmountable becomes smaller, as both of you find your way toward each other, one step, one moment at a time. When you finally stop expecting them to meet you on your terms, you begin to experience a profound shift in your emotional world. No longer are you tangled in the constant need for validation or reassurance. Instead, you find yourself embracing the idea that true connection doesn't require you to force anything. You begin to realize that love, when it's authentic and deep, isn't about trying to control or manipulate someone into behaving in a way that aligns with your expectations. It's about meeting them where they are, with empathy and understanding, while also honoring your own needs. This shift in perspective allows you to stop viewing their distance as a personal shortcoming. You stop blaming yourself or feeling as though you are inadequate. You start to see their emotional withdrawal for what it truly is, a reflection of their own struggles, not a rejection of you. It's no longer about whether they can meet your needs right away. It's about having the patience to let them meet their own needs, and in turn, allowing them to open up in their own time, at their own pace. You begin to release the need to control the outcome and accept the beauty of what you can create together when both of you are ready. In doing this, you open the door to a deeper sense of peace. Your self-worth is no longer tied to their availability, their actions, or their ability to reciprocate in the exact way you want. You begin to trust yourself more, knowing that you can stand firm, emotionally intact, regardless of what's happening around you. This emotional independence doesn't mean you love them less, it means you love yourself more. You stop seeking approval from them and start focusing on how you can nurture your own emotional growth. You begin to see that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's response. It comes from within you. When you stop waiting for them to change and accept them as they are, you also free them to change in their own time, on their own terms. You no longer pressure them to meet your emotional needs. Instead, you create a space where they can slowly and safely begin to meet their own. And in doing this, you are not abandoning them. You are allowing them the space to heal, to grow, and to come to you when they are ready. Not because they are being pushed, but because they feel safe and supported. The more you grow in this way, the more you realize that true connection comes from being whole within yourself. When you no longer depend on someone else to fulfill you, you become the kind of person who can give love freely, without expecting anything in return. This love becomes a gift, a source of light that radiates from your own emotional security. It's a love that doesn't demand, doesn't rush, but allows both people to flourish in their own time. As you continue to develop this deep emotional resilience, you begin to see that the space between you and them doesn't need to be filled with fear or anxiety. Instead, it becomes a place of growth, a place where both of you can evolve as individuals, yet still choose to walk this journey together. In this shared space, you realize that emotional distance doesn't have to mean emotional loss. It can be the beginning of a deeper, more authentic connection. When you stop measuring love by someone else's actions, you begin to understand the true depth of what it means to love and be loved. You stop thinking that their emotional distance is a reflection of how much they care about you. Instead, you realize that it's simply a result of where they are in their own emotional journey. You no longer let their actions define you, and in doing so, You release the emotional pressure that once weighed you down. No longer are you stuck in the cycle of questioning whether they truly care or whether they're pushing you away. You recognize that love isn't about constant proximity or immediate reciprocation. It's about the choice to be present, to show up, even when things aren't perfect. This understanding frees you. It allows you to move beyond the need for constant reassurance or validation. You no longer base your self-worth on how much attention or affection they give you. Instead, you find your value in who you are as a person, not what someone else can offer you. This doesn't mean you stop desiring closeness or connection. It means you stop demanding it to feel whole. You understand that you are complete, just as you are, and that any love you receive is a beautiful addition, not a necessity for your happiness. As you embrace this deeper understanding, you begin to see the power of emotional patience. You stop rushing to fix things or to force them to open up. You allow them to come to their own conclusions in their own time. You stop feeling the need to make things happen, and instead, you let things unfold naturally. By doing so, you create an environment where they feel safe to slowly, and without pressure, open up to you. This doesn't happen overnight, but with each step of patience, you cultivate trust. You become a steady presence, someone they can rely on not to demand, but to simply be there when they are ready. In this space, you begin to heal yourself too. You stop waiting for someone else to fill the gaps in your life. You take full responsibility for your emotional well-being, making it clear to yourself that your happiness doesn't depend on their readiness to open up. As you become emotionally independent, you give yourself the freedom to grow and flourish in all aspects of your life. You become less focused on what they are or aren't doing, and more focused on how you can evolve, both in your emotional journey and in your life as a whole. By embracing emotional patience, you allow for the possibility of a connection that is rooted in mutual understanding and respect. You learn that emotional distance isn't something to be feared, but something to be navigated with compassion. It's in this compassion that true intimacy can grow, not from forcing closeness, but from allowing each other the space to heal, grow, and become better versions of yourselves. And in this space, you realize that love, at its core, isn't about keeping score or rushing towards some idealized vision of perfection. It's about the steady, consistent act of showing up, no matter where the other person is in their emotional journey. This is where real transformation happens for both of you. When you embrace the idea that you don't need someone else's emotional availability to feel whole, you unlock a power within you that can't be easily shaken. You stop looking to them to fix your feelings, and instead you take full responsibility for your own emotional state. This is where true strength begins. It's the understanding that your happiness, your peace, your sense of self-worth does not depend on their actions or reactions. You are no longer waiting for them to change in order to feel validated. You validate yourself first. You embrace your own growth, your own healing, and your own peace of mind. This shift isn't just a change in perspective, it's a deep internal transformation. You stop seeing emotional distance as a rejection, and instead, you see it as an opportunity for you both to grow individually. You no longer need them to be emotionally present for you to feel fulfilled. You know that you can stand strong in your own emotional space. This doesn't mean you stop caring about them or stop desiring connection. It simply means that you've shifted your mindset, realizing that your emotional well-being doesn't rely on them. You begin to realize that when you let go of the need for constant closeness, you give both of you the freedom to become better versions of yourselves. When you stop putting the weight of your emotional fulfillment on their shoulders, you allow them the space to work through their own fears and insecurities. You give them the opportunity to grow, to heal, and to open up at their own pace without feeling the pressure to conform to your needs. This understanding doesn't make you cold or distant. In fact, it makes you even more compassionate. You learn to respect their emotional space because you understand that everyone has their own journey. You become less focused on what they can do for you and more focused on creating a relationship where both of you can evolve, each in your own time. You stop trying to fix or change them, and instead, you focus on creating a safe, loving environment where they feel comfortable enough to slowly open up when they are ready. In the process, you discover an inner peace that is not dependent on anyone else's actions. Your emotional resilience becomes stronger. You are no longer swayed by their moods or emotional availability. You stand firm in your own emotional stability, knowing that you are capable of handling whatever comes your way. You trust yourself enough to know that you don't need to chase or beg for affection. You create a life for yourself that is full of love, joy, and fulfillment, without relying on anyone else to provide it. This shift is the key to true emotional freedom. It's the understanding that love doesn't have to be demanding or possessive. Instead, love becomes a beautiful, unspoken connection that grows naturally when both individuals are ready. It's the recognition that you can love someone deeply without needing them to fulfill every emotional need you have. When you stand in this space of emotional independence, you become a beacon of light and strength, not just for yourself, but for the relationship as well. When you finally let go of the idea that someone else needs to be emotionally available to validate your worth, you begin to experience a shift in how you approach every relationship, including the one with yourself. You stop seeking approval from others, and instead, you learn to approve of yourself. This internal validation becomes your source of strength. It gives you the confidence to stand tall, knowing that you don't need someone else's presence to feel whole. You realize that emotional independence isn't about shutting people out or withdrawing from connection. It's about knowing that your worth isn't dependent on someone's response to you. You stop attaching your sense of self to how much someone else is emotionally giving you. Your self-worth becomes rooted in who you are, not in what they do or don't do. This transformation comes with an immense sense of peace. You no longer feel the need to constantly chase or analyze. You stop questioning their feelings or trying to figure out why they aren't as responsive as you'd like. Instead, you start focusing on nurturing your own emotional well-being. You become more intentional with how you spend your time, prioritizing your growth, your happiness, and your fulfillment. You create a life that is full, vibrant, and independent of anyone's emotional availability. You stop waiting for someone else to make you feel seen or heard. Instead, you take that responsibility on yourself, recognizing that you are fully capable of creating the life you desire. You become more patient, not just with others, but with yourself as well. You understand that emotional healing doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, gradual process that requires compassion and understanding. By shifting your focus from their behavior to your own inner growth, you give yourself the space to heal and evolve at your own pace. You stop rushing through the process, knowing that the most meaningful changes take time. You start to see that the real power lies in how you show up for yourself, regardless of what's happening outside of you. This emotional strength isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about accepting yourself fully, with all of your imperfections, and trusting that you are enough, just as you are. As you embrace this mindset, you stop seeing emotional distance as a threat. Instead, you begin to view it as a space for growth. You give yourself and others the time to evolve without the pressure to rush toward something that may not be ready yet. You stop trying to force a connection and allow it to grow naturally. You understand that not every moment needs to be filled with constant interaction or attention. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to give space, to give room for both people to grow, to heal, and to find their way back to each other when they are ready. This is where the magic happens. The space between you and them doesn't have to be filled with fear or anxiety. Instead, it becomes a sacred space where growth occurs, where both of you can develop as individuals and come back together with even more strength. This space is the foundation for a love that is deep, authentic, and sustainable. You begin to realize that true connection isn't about constant contact. It's about honoring each other's journey, understanding that love grows when both people are free to become the best versions of themselves.